My name is Frank, and I'm 68 years old, living here in a quiet corner of Vermont. For 40 years, the rumble of a bus engine was the soundtrack to my life. I drove the city routes, the school routes, watching the world go by through that big front window, seeing the faces of hundreds, maybe thousands of people every day. Retirement hit me like a quiet, empty bus stop. One day you're needed, you have a purpose, you're steering something important, and the next you're just parked. My days became a gentle rhythm of brewing coffee, watching the sunrise paint the mountains, and maybe tending to my small garden. I'd walk down to the general store for milk and a newspaper, exchanging pleasantries with familiar faces, but there was a quiet hum of something missing inside me, a feeling like I had more miles left to drive, more stops to make. I missed the children most of all, their bright, eager faces boarding the bus in the morning, their sleepy goodbyes in the afternoon. I used to keep a little bowl of peppermints for the quiet ones, the ones who needed a small comfort. It was a simple thing, but it made a difference. The real challenge started to nag at me when I began taking longer walks, venturing out beyond the neat rows of houses in my village and towards the edge of town, where the roads weren't quite so paved and the houses were a little more scattered. I saw kids playing in yards that felt too small or kicking a worn-out soccer ball in dusty fields. Their eyes were bright, just like the kids on my old bus route, full of curiosity, but something was different. They seemed disconnected. Our small town had a lovely library, but it was a good few miles away, tucked in the center, and there was no regular bus service out to these fringe neighborhoods. Most parents worked long hours, and transportation was a real struggle. I saw kids who didn't have many books in their homes, and the thought settled in my chest like a heavy stone. How could these bright young minds explore new worlds, learn new things, dream big dreams if they couldn't even get their hands on a simple storybook? My internal nemesis, the voice of doubt, started to whisper. Frank, you're just an old bus driver. What can you possibly do? It's too big a problem. You're retired. You should be relaxing. But the image of those kids, their bright eyes and limited opportunities, kept returning to me, stronger than any whisper of doubt. I knew deep down that I couldn't just sit idly by. I started small, just asking around, mentioning my concerns to a few mothers I met at the grocery store, women who lived in those same neighborhoods. Their eyes lit up with shared frustration and longing. "Oh, Mr. Frank," one mother, Maria, said, her voice tired but earnest. "My boy loves stories, but we just can't get to the library and books are so expensive." Another, Sarah, nodded sadly. "My daughter tries so hard in school, but she's behind in reading, and I don't know how to help her without access to books." Their stories fueled a fire in me. I remembered seeing an old city bus, the kind I used to drive, sitting in the back lot of the city's public works department, slowly rusting away, destined for the scrap heap. An idea, wild and wonderful, began to bloom in my mind, a mobile library, a bookmobile. I could bring the books to the children. It felt like the perfect way to combine my past and my present, to drive with purpose once more. I talked to Maria and Sarah and a few other moms. Their excitement was contagious. We formed a small group, meeting in Maria's kitchen, dreaming up plans. The first hurdle was getting the bus. It took weeks of phone calls, navigating city hall bureaucracy, filling out forms, and explaining our crazy idea to skeptical officials. Finally, after much persistence and the tireless advocacy of the moms, the city agreed to sell us the old bus for a symbolic $1, provided we towed it away ourselves and took full responsibility for it. That was a victory, but a small one, because when we finally went to pick up Bertha, as we affectionately named her, she was a true mess. Her engine coughed and sputtered, refusing to truly start. Her tires were flat, the seats were ripped, and the windows were grimy beyond belief. Rust bloomed in angry patches along her sides, like an old disease. Getting Bertha to Maria's small farm, where we had permission to park her, was an ordeal in itself, costing us the last of our initial fundraising money for a tow truck. The next few months were a blur of hard work and growing despair. We held bake sales, car washes, and garage sales, scraping together every dollar we could. The moms were incredible, putting in long hours after their jobs and families, cleaning Bertha, painting, trying to make her feel like a welcoming space. But the mechanical issues were overwhelming. A local mechanic looked at Bertha and gave us a daunting estimate for engine repairs, new tires, and brake lines. It was a sum so large it felt like a mountain we could never climb. We tried to get book donations, but many were dusty old textbooks or children's books missing pages, not the vibrant, engaging stories we envisioned. Frank felt the weight of every setback in his bones. He spent hours researching, calling everyone he knew, trying to find cheaper parts, trying to find volunteer mechanics, but everywhere he turned, he hit a wall. The initial enthusiasm of the moms, once so bright, began to dim. Their children missed them, their husbands complained about the time, and the sheer amount of work with so little progress was draining. "Frank," Sarah admitted one evening, her voice close to tears, "I just don't know if we can do this. We're spending so much time and the bus still doesn't even run. Maybe it was just a pipe dream." That night, Frank sat alone in his quiet living room, the weight of their words crushing him. The doubt that had been a whisper was now a roar. "She's right," he told himself. "You're too old. You should have known better. It's a waste of everyone's time and hope." He looked at the half-finished schematics for shelves and reading nooks he had drawn, the list of mechanical parts they still needed, and felt a profound weariness. He considered calling Maria in the morning, telling her it was over, telling her to sell Bertha for scrap. The biggest blow came the next week. We had finally found a used engine for Bertha, a true miracle thanks to a distant cousin of Maria's who worked at a junkyard 2 states over. It would cost almost every penny we had saved, but it was our last chance. We managed to get it delivered. Just as we were about to begin installation, the mechanic we had lined up, a young man who had promised to help us with a discount, suddenly fell ill and had to back out of all work for months. There was no one else. We had the engine, but no one to put it in, no money for a professional. Bertha sat in Maria's yard, a useless shell with a new heart sitting beside her, untouchable. I felt my own heart sink to my stomach. This was it, the absolute end. I truly thought about giving up. I walked home in the twilight, the air feeling heavy around me, the beautiful Vermont landscape offering no comfort. That night, I just sat. I didn't even make my usual cup of tea. I just sat in the quiet, empty house, feeling the years on my shoulders, the failure burning in my gut. But then there was a knock at my door. It was Maria, her eyes red-rimmed but determined. Behind her stood Sarah and 3 other moms. "Frank," Maria started, her voice unwavering, "we heard about the mechanic, and yes, it's terrible, but we're not giving up. We can't." Sarah chimed in, "My daughter drew this for you." She held out a crumpled crayon drawing of a bright yellow bus filled with stick-figure children, all smiling. "She keeps asking when the book bus is coming." And that's when it hit me. It wasn't just my dream, it was theirs, it was the children's. That small act of faith from those determined mothers, and that simple drawing was the spark. I looked at their tired but hopeful faces, and a renewed surge of energy, of purpose, flowed through me. "All right," I said, a new resolve hardening my voice. "We find a way. We always find a way." I made a few phone calls that night, something I hadn't dared to do in weeks. I called an old friend, another retired bus driver named George, who had always been a whiz with engines. I explained our predicament, and without a moment's hesitation, George agreed to come down and lend his expertise. He brought along 2 young apprentices from his old garage, eager to learn and help. The next morning, it was like a scene from a movie. George and his apprentices started on the engine, while the moms and I tackled the interior. Other people from the community, who had heard whispers of our project, began to show up. An older gentleman who used to be a carpenter offered to build custom bookshelves. Teenagers, bored on their summer break, eagerly volunteered to sand and paint. Someone else brought a pile of colorful, gently used children's books they had collected from their church group. A local bakery started dropping off fresh pastries and coffee for the volunteers every morning. The unexpected kindness, the outpouring of support, it felt like a warm embrace. It wasn't just about the bus anymore. It was about connection, about people helping people, about a whole community coming together for its children. I felt like the old Frank again, the one who navigated the streets with confidence. Only this time I was navigating a different kind of journey, one filled with shared purpose. The day Bertha, now a vibrant blue with Frank's bookmobile painted proudly on her side, made her first stop in one of those outlying neighborhoods was truly one of the happiest days of my life. The children, their faces alight with wonder, streamed towards us, their parents watching with tears in their eyes. The shelves were filled with bright, inviting books. The reading nooks were cozy with donated cushions, and the air crackled with excitement. My new normal is a busy one, and I wouldn't have it any other way. 3 days a week, I drive Bertha with one of the moms volunteering as my co-pilot to different neighborhoods, seeing the smiles, hearing the laughter, watching little hands eagerly choose their next adventure. I'm no longer just Frank, the retired bus driver. I'm Mr. Frank, the bookmobile man. My loneliness has completely vanished, replaced by the joyful chatter of children and the camaraderie of a dedicated community. I've learned that hope is not just a feeling, it's an action, and it's always strongest when shared. I'm helping Maria and Sarah now, as they're trying to start a small after-school tutoring program inspired by the success of the bookmobile. We're even planning to buy a second, smaller van to reach even more remote areas. It's a ripple effect, a chain reaction of goodness that started with a simple idea and a whole lot of setbacks. Just last week, a young girl about 8 years old came up to me and handed me a handmade card. On the front, she had drawn Bertha surrounded by little stars. Inside, in careful, slightly wobbly letters, it read, "Dear Mr. Frank, thank you for bringing the world to us. I want to be an astronaut now." And then a little postscript, "You're better than peppermint." It was a simple message, but it meant more to me than any award. It proved that sometimes the greatest journeys begin when you finally decide to take a chance, and the most unexpected kindness can turn a rusty old bus and an old man's quiet retirement into a vibrant new beginning.